Welcome to this episode of the Common Cultures Podcast. I'm your host, Simon Eisenbach, and I am here with Joe Bott, who is the head of operations for Second Summit Cidery here in Millcreek, Utah.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on.
Give me a couple sentences about what you do, what you enjoy in life.
Oh, mainly what I do now is a lot of cidery stuff. The ins and outs of bars, marketing, sales, bartending, short order cook a lot of times, making food for the bar and all that kind of stuff. But otherwise, I just love being out here in Utah and trying to stay active and do fun things.
Nice. And I start every episode with these three questions. You got a little precursor of them. How would you personally define sustainability?
Sustainability, I think it's just doing your best to not put too much burden on the world around you and that kind of thing. I mean, it's hard to be fully sustainable. I mean, you can really try the best you can. And I think it's the small pieces of your life that you can try to be a little more sustainable, make the biggest difference than the whole overhaul.
Yeah.
It's tough for sure, especially when you're a minuscule part of the whole problem when it comes down to it.
It's so true. Everyone is such a tiny fraction of it. And how would you define community?
Yeah, I think community is just, the world you put yourself in. That's on the small scale is your kind of 10 to 15 people you see all the time, and then it grows from there, and then all of a sudden you're statewide and that kind of stuff. Or, I've lived a lot of places, so my community is kind of far-reaching at this point.
I feel that.
On a holistic scale. But I think, my core community is definitely those people I see consistently, and then all the people I get to interact with through them. So
yeah, nice. And how would you, in an ideal world, what would a sustainable community look like to you?
That's a tough one. I think a sustainable community is just, the people you're with and all that kind of stuff, working together. I mean, you try to have the same mindsets and build towards a better goal of just kind of thriving together. Obviously that's always tough, but I think it's just everybody kind of in the same mindset of doing their part to kind of make everything go a little bit smoother in this world.
That's very fair. And so you are not born and raised in Utah. We met here in Utah.
Yes.
Where are you originally from?
To trace it all the way back, I was born in Tempe, Arizona, so not too far away when it comes down to it. But I've lived Arizona. I've lived in California. Spent most of my time in Iowa for the most part, but then to Texas, Virginia.
What brought your family to Iowa?
My mom is in the was in the home mortgage banking community, I guess I should say. So she started in a bank and then moved up in home mortgage, and Wells Fargo headquarters for home mortgages in Des Moines.
Oh, so, I did not.
Yeah.
All right.
Des Moines has Des Moines, Iowa is where I grew up mostly, and went to most of grade school, part of high school, a little bit after college and that kind of stuff. Is a big financial hub for insurance agencies and home mortgage.
I mean, that actually kind of makes sense to me because it's right off an interstate.
Yep.
And it's a big enough city, and it's pretty centrally located.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people coming from all over the country coming into Des Moines and seeing how great it really is.
I've been there twice. Once was filming a TV show that has not been released yet.
Okay.
And the other was driving through moving out here. And I spent a night in Des Moines.
A lot of people have passed through Des Moines, I should say.
Yeah, Chips has actually stayed in Des Moines.
Okay, very cool.
And then I drove all the way from Des Moines to Salt Lake in one day.
Oh,
that was...
I haven't done that stretch before, but it is... I usually hopefully stop in Denver if I have a friend around.
It was 17 hours.
Yep.
And it was one of those situations of... I either get stuck in a snowstorm in Wyoming, or I power through to Salt Lake.
Okay, yeah.
And it was one of those storms of it could be 4 days before the highway reopens.
Yeah, no, it's never fun up there.
And with having the dog, I was like, I don't want to get stuck in a hotel in middle of nowhere, Wyoming for 4 days.
Yeah, it's once you leave Denver, it's Green River is the next big city or whatever, and it's it's just one turn of the interstate, and it's okay, well then it's nothing until you hit down into the valley.
Exactly. So growing up in a lot of different places, how would you describe that?
Yeah, it wasn't like, so people always assume you're a military kid when you move that much.
That's true. That's where
My mom was a military brat, so I just call myself a home mortgage brat as we moved around. But I was lucky enough that I was a swimmer.
Okay.
So like I always like, every new place I went, there was a swim team to join.
Totally.
And almost like an automatic friend group. So that really like helped. Like, okay, well, I come here, I have 25 people my age that we do the same thing already. And then you become friends with them, and then like you have your school friends. So I always had like, it was always weird too growing up. It's like, I had my school friends that I didn't hang out that often. And then I had my swim team friends. And like sometimes they were the same people because they went to school with me. But other times it was like, I would never hang out with my school friends. And it's like, I gotta go swim practice and we're hanging out with swim people afterwards.
Right. Well, I feel like, especially with team sports like that, it's literally like you get out of school, you go to the team sport, you do the after team sport, then you're doing homework, and then you're sleeping, and then you do it over.
Yeah, very much so.
Over.
Yeah. I think I was like after from 14 on, it was like 30 hours a week in the pool probably. So it's like if I wasn't at school, I was in the pool.
Yeah.
And then if that we're like eating food together afterwards, and then we're like going home and then waking up at 5 a.m. to go back to practice.
What was your disciplines?
Distance freestyle, unfortunately.
Okay.
I couldn't swim fast, but I could swim for a very long time. Like, I mean, I was even better at like the open water 5K than I was the mile.
Got it.
So, you know, I wish I could have swam fast, but I had no fast twitch muscles in my body.
It takes a very special person to have those fast muscles.
I wish it was me. I meet people and they're like, oh, I sprinted. I'm like, you lucky son of a gun. Like, I wish I could.
Awesome. What else did you enjoy growing up?
I mean, a lot of what we did, like, if I wasn't swimming, we did a lot of fishing, traveling, and just like general stuff. We had a motorhome growing up, so
cool.
A lot of times it would be down to the coast to go fishing on like stay at a campground that was basically just a parking lot with a pier on it, and then you could be fishing and that kind of thing.
Was that in Texas?
Texas a lot,
Okay.
down to the Keys sometimes and that kind of thing. But yeah, definitely a lot in Texas where it'd be like, this pier sticks out 100 feet into the water, and we're gonna sit there till 2 a.m. and we're gonna fish. But I mean, like just like going into like I remember like national parks and like Mammoth Cave National Park, like down in Kentucky. Like it was just an easy thing, like the random things you could do in those like side attractions and that kind of stuff.
Totally.
So a lot of that growing up, and then a lot of the travel I did was like through swim meets too. So we like random cities that we had a swim meet in and that kind of stuff.
Were you competing on like a regional scale, or were you?
Yeah, so for the most part regional, and then when I moved to Virginia, we joined a swim team where that was national scale at that point, where we were competing regionally, but then we would go to a national meet, maybe like in Florida or something like that too. So you had that kind of like upper level, like where I actually competed with, or I swam practice with Katie Ledecky, who's like the greatest female swimmer of all time.
Human
where she used to like at 14 was kicking all our butts in practice, and we were like 4 years older than her. So like sometimes.
I forget what discipline it is, but she owned for a long time like every one of the top 20 times.
Yeah, I think that's the 800 freestyle. She has like the top 25 times. A girl she lost for the first time in like 7 years a couple weeks ago, and that girl put up like the 23rd fastest time ever, and she has the 22 ahead of her, whatever it is. So
whatever it is, it's an insane feat that even like Michael Phelps didn't.
Yeah, no one can touch her so far. So it's kind of crazy when it comes down to it.
Yeah, that's wild. When you are in a similar realm competing and you see somebody that is like that far ahead, what does that feel like to you?
It's kind of crazy. I mean, luckily, different genders, so we're like competing in different.
Totally.
And she's a few years younger, and it was always just like we'd be at swim meets and she's breaking like records, American records at 13 and 14. You're like,
it's still like mesmerizing.
And you're like, holy crap! And then we'd always just like, I would give her crap like, oh, still beat you by 15 seconds. And I'm like, I'm 3 years older, and she's just broke and then like all that kind of stuff. Where then she's in practice, just like out swimming everybody every time. You're just like, you just know she's going to do something crazy, and it's like, oh, she's going to win a gold medal, no doubt. Yeah. And she does. Did and does. And we'll probably continue to do this next Olympics for sure.
Oh, dude. It's going to be crazy what happens.
Yeah.
So after high school, where'd you end up graduating high school?
I graduated back in Iowa, so I went to up to 7th grade in Iowa, or 2nd through 7th grade in Iowa.
Okay.
8th, 9th, and part of 10th in Texas. Finished 10th and 11th in Virginia, and then back to Iowa for senior of high school, which was the nice thing of all things. I had friends still
in Iowa
that I went to a different school district school, but like I still had people that I knew from my district and that kind of thing. So I graduated from Iowa, and then I ended up going to college in Cincinnati.
What brought you to Cincinnati?
Swimming. So I swam. Yeah. So I went to University of Cincinnati on a recruiting trip Easter weekend in 2012, and I like this place. I guess I'll go here.
Nice. So you actually were on the swim team there?
On the swim team. I swam for the first 3 years, and then I was sick of it.
Collegiate athletics is a time-consuming job that most people have no understanding.
Yeah, and that's something like I've swam so many hours a week for so long. At that point, I was just like, it's just my heart wasn't anymore. I was like, I'm out of here. Like I gotta. So then I just did one more semester of school, finished up, and then I was like, okay, I'm done. I can get out here and get on my way and figure out what the heck I'm gonna do next.
Yeah, that's fair. I actually played 2 different sports in college.
Oh, okay.
Because I got so bored of one that I went to community college.
Okay.
But I went to, at the time, what was the top 2-year school for bowling in the nation.
Okay.
And it conveniently was like 5 minutes from my house.
Okay, yeah.
But then after that, I realized like if I wanted to do anything else in bowling, I had to be the top 50 in the world. And I was like, cool, done with this.
Yeah.
And then I went and walked onto a Division II soccer team.
Very cool.
So like I completely understand like being so sick of a sport.
Yeah.
Because like from high school all the way through 2 years of college, I was in a bowling alley 5 to 7 days a week.
That's crazy.
And yeah. So I completely understand that. And you're just like, especially because you're still in college, you're like, I want to do other things. I want to enjoy life. I want to be a college kid. And yeah.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a weird kind of like balance you do. And some people are just like, I'm in it for the end. And like, I got to the point where I was like, I want to go get a job and like start working and make some extra money on the side and this, that, and the other. And
because you kind of see that you're like, okay, my profession is not going to be this.
Yeah, definitely men's swimming is, unless you're the top 25, usually you can't make any money in the sport for the most part and that kind of thing, unless you're competing for a national team. And I was not that fast of a swimmer. Right. So it was just one of those like, okay, it's time to get out of here and get going and do something different.
What did you go to college for?
I was just like a general science degree, so I was like, there's thoughts of maybe med school, and I was like, I don't really want to do that badly, and then I kind of had to stay in my lane with swimming to stay, like I couldn't transfer to a different program because of like eligibility stuff, so then it was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna get a general, like I got an environmental science degree, and then it was just like a kind of just a general science and overall, I guess I should say, and then it was like, who knows what I'm going to do with that? And I was doing GIS and I kind of like that stuff, but I wasn't really set on any one thing as I was leaving. It was just like, I have a science degree, I'll go get a job, something in science.
So what was your first job out of college?
My first job, I sold cars at CarMax.
Nice.
Yeah, because I guess I had moved to complete left field. I had moved home because I wasn't planning on graduating early, so it was like, okay, I'm done. I got back and I was like, what am I going to do? I have no idea. And we were at CarMax selling a car and like, oh, you should apply. Like we need people to work. And I was like, sounds great. I'll apply. And they're like, hey, you have a job. And like, so then I learned to sell cars. And I did that for like 6 months. And it was like, yeah, this is interesting. I learned a lot about cars and like that whole side of stuff. And I was like, but I can't do this for, I can't do it. 6 months was plenty of time for sure.
But you probably learned things that you have to use.
Yeah, it was definitely a good learning experience for like, on the whole side of like loans and more like lending and that kind of thing. And I used a fax machine for like every day of my life for like 6 months. And it's like, who thought you'd use a fax machine in 20?
What's a fax machine?
Exactly, like 2016 using a fax machine consistently.
The state of Colorado still requires any paperwork for the sale of a vehicle to have an actual ink signature. Jeez. You can't DocuSign.
That's crazy.
Like I was like, that's a dumb law that needs to be updated.
Well, and that's like I guess like you can't can't like try like, well, I'm going to sign and take a picture of it anyway. So what's really the difference when it comes down to it? But
yeah,
people have their quirks, I guess, or states have their quirks.
Every government has its quirks. And so while I was researching, I noticed that you've done a bit of traveling over the years.
Yeah.
Where have you gone? What brought you to different places?
Yeah.
What types of experiences have you enjoyed?
So after I graduated, I kind of popped around, worked and studied a little bit in different places, and I was kind of figuring out what's my next step, and it turned out I started a degree in sustainable energy in Iceland. So I moved to Reykjavik, Iceland.
Okay.
And I lived there for 2.5 years.
Is this before it became the tourist trap that it is?
It was already touristy at that point. That was 2017 I moved there.
So it was starting to get...
Yeah, it's like that big volcano erupted in 2007-8.
Yeah.
And that kind of started the boom of tourism. But I feel like not a lot of people had started going there. I think I was probably on the tail end of the kind of upsweep. But then like once I got there, it was like heavy tourism. We're like, it got easier and easier to fly there with like some of the budget airlines. I mean, you could fly like round trip to Reykjavik for like $250 on the budget airline out of Chicago, and it was like 6-hour flight, and you're kind of basically in Europe at that point, and London wasn't that far anymore. So it was heavy tourism in general, and that economy is a tourist economy when it comes down to it.
Totally.
But I went to school there and got a job in a gift shop, worked at a bar for a while and that kind of thing, and it was kind of a fun time. That was like I didn't have much responsibility in that. It was like I can afford the bills on the work I got.
Yeah.
I'm going to school, and then it was like I was a great excuse for a lot of my friends to come visit me.
Yeah.
Like, I have free place to stay, because Iceland was expensive on the whole, and like especially for Midwest people, and like I'd have like New York friends like, oh, it's not that expensive here. I'm like, well, you're used to New York prices. Like, this is a tiny little place. So I became a tour guide in that sense of like, show my friends around. Like, people are like, oh, what do you do? You go to waterfall every day? I'm like, no, like I live in the city. I work every day.
Yeah.
Like I do my tourism stuff when you guys come. Like I go and we drive out and go see something.
I don't do this stuff unless I'm showing you.
Yeah, and like especially if people don't realize like it's not that far of a drive, but it's like an hour and a half to the nearest big waterfall. And it's like, I'll tell you, a waterfall is not that interesting after the 5th time you've seen it.
Yes.
Especially when it's just like, it's big. Yeah, I get it.
I grew up 3 hours from Niagara Falls.
Okay.
So I completely understand that, like, when I was a kid, we went there, cool. But also, one of my best friends lived in Buffalo. And I'd go see him all the time.
Yeah.
But, like, I'd maybe gone to the falls twice after as an adult.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and that's the thing is, like, it doesn't get old, but it gets, it's the same thing when you see, like, people will hate when I say this, and it's like, oh, you saw the Northern Lights? I'm like, yeah, like all the time. Like, it was dark half the year, and it was like, for a while, it's like, yeah, those are cool, but I also want to go to bed now. I'm like, so it was more fun to like bring people and see them see it for the first time. Yeah. Or like if we do a trip, like, okay, well, I'm going to stop here because I haven't done this one thing yet. Like, we'll pull off, or there's this random road sign, let's pull off and see what it's actually about.
That's awesome.
Sometimes it's the dumbest thing ever, or sometimes it's like a sweet hot tub on the side of the road that no one's in, and you're just hanging out with a couple beers and that kind of stuff.
You never know what you're going to find
exactly
on the side of the road. That's very true.
Especially in Iceland. Yeah, but then Iceland was 2019. I wasn't close to finishing. I need to write a thesis still, and I was already a year behind, and I wasn't really inspired to write a thesis at that point. I was just kind of like, I don't know if this is really what I want to do even. And then my school's like, hey, we'll pay for you to go to Indonesia to finish your thesis. And I was like, I will take you up on that.
Cool.
Great. They're like, here, like the EU is like, here's some money.
Yeah.
I was like, love the EU. All of a sudden, like, let's go. Like, this is great. So I flew to Indonesia, or I came back for a month or two, and then flew to Indonesia.
Where in Indo were you?
I was in Yogyakarta. So it's central West Java, like the cultural capital. It's where the Sultan of Indonesia still lived.
I know. I've been on Java. I've been to 3 islands of Indonesia.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, so I moved out there, but coincidentally, I chose to move there February of 2020.
And the world shut down.
And the world was starting to creep along to that shutdown, and then it got to like 30 days in, we're all kind of, or like maybe 15 days, and we're like, ooh, like I had a lot of Australians that were there for their schooling, and some French girls that were in my program, so we were always hanging out, and we're like, so like it's getting a little different here now, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, like should we be worried? And then like by like 1st of March, we're like, okay, we're making a call in a week, and then all the Australians I knew, like Australia, the country itself was like, come home now or we're not helping you get home. And I was like, I guess I should go home too. Yeah. So it was like, let me book a flight. And I think I was gone 4 days later back to the States. And I was like, I'd rather get quarantined in Des Moines, Iowa than in Indonesia where I knew nobody at all and like
I-
had no access to anything really when it came down to it.
I was in a West African country that I can't say on the record where I was, but it was a place where there was no COVID at the time.
Yeah.
But it was a very high terrorist activity area.
Okay.
And literally, like, we got a phone call about it, and it was like, hey, you guys have 48 hours to get back to the capital to get out,
Yeah.
or else you're stuck until who knows when.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that toss-up of no COVID and terrorism, and we are prime targets.
Yeah.
Or COVID at home.
Yeah. Well, now was like when I flew back, I was like, I'm gonna fly. I flew actually, I guess I flew west technically. I was like, I didn't want to fly through China, like Beijing, Japan, or anything, just in the sheer fact of like, I would hate to get to the Tokyo airport and then it fully shuts down.
Yes.
And I'm like, I will risk it because the Middle East was still pretty open at that point. It was like, I flew from Yogyakarta to Jakarta, and I can't remember what I went through. I feel like I flew Qatar, so I must have flown into Qatar or even Dubai.
It was probably Qatar. If you flew, did you fly Qatar Airlines?
I can't remember at that point because it was just all a blur. Where it's like I can't remember if I wore a mask on the plane at that. Like, and it was like we flew to the Middle East and like all the NGO Americans were coming out of Africa there.
Yep.
And then it was straight to like 17 hours to LA.
Yep.
And then it was that was a long flight to LA. But this was like the week after that whole like 7-hour delay at customs at O'Hare happened.
Yeah.
So they were like, hold your passport up and go right through. And then I was like, sweet, like got through. Then actually I flew to Salt Lake.
Okay.
So I got into Salt Lake because my mom was living here, and I was like, I'm going to stop here, stay at her apartment, and then I'm going to fly back to Des Moines. And it was the day of that earthquake.
Oh.
So I woke up to that 2020 earthquake in Salt Lake. Cool. I think my flight got delayed even more, like 12 hours. And then I ended up in Minneapolis at 2 in the morning with no flight till 9 a.m. Sitting there waiting. I'm like, oh my God, this is like, I think it must have been like 72 hours of travel at that point. I was just like,
that's brutal.
I'm like, do I rent a car and drive to Des Moines at 2 in the morning? Or do I just wait for this like 7 hours for a flight back to Des Moines? And then it was get to Des Moines, I was like, I guess we just sit here now and hang out.
Wild. Dude, those were wild times.
It was a little crazy.
So did you stay in Des Moines at the beginning of COVID?
Yeah, so I was in Des Moines, and I was there for like a month because I had the money from the EU, and I was like, they didn't make me give it back. I was like, well, I don't have to spend it. I don't have to get a job right away. But then I got a job like taking temperatures at a call center because I was like, I don't know. I was going to move somewhere else, and I didn't know what I was going to do. Or like, I was looking for like what job do I actually want to do now that I'm back in the States? Maybe I'll do a job that I can build into a thesis and finish that with grad school and stuff. But it was like, got a job like $15 an hour taking temperatures at a call center. Where I just sat there and watched Netflix all day, and it was like, you're good. That lasted about like 45 days before they got a robot in there. And I'm like, sounds good. And then I think a couple days later, I got an offer to do an AmeriCorps job up in Duluth, Minnesota. And it was like, they're like, hey, if we give you this job, are you going to accept it? And it started in August. Like, yeah, I'm down. So then it was all of a sudden, I was like 2 months later, I had moved to Duluth, Minnesota, 6 hours north, lived on Lake Superior, and work at a nonprofit doing energy efficiency for homes.
All right.
So kind of still in my wheelhouse of like things like that. But it was like, and I was thinking like, oh, end of August, like COVID's gonna be done for. We're like, we'll be out and doing things. I don't think I left my house, like other than like a few things, like to get started with the job. Like we just stayed in our house. Yeah. And none of all my job was hands-on that I was supposed to be doing for this nonprofit, or like organizing volunteers to go into homes that they didn't live which you couldn't do. So it was like 6 months we sat around like doing other things, like trying to like make some sense. And then I was like, I got a job at a bar at the same time. It was like, which was mainly just to go purchasing and like helping with that kind of stuff. So
was that bar the cidery?
That was the cidery. Okay. So that was the cidery in Minnesota.
So that's how you got introduced into cideries?
Yeah, like, and I've had cider, I mean, throughout the years. Everybody had Angry Orchard in college and that kind of stuff. And
I more so meant like getting close
to it. So I'd worked in breweries before, and like just dive bars, and I worked at like a craft beer bar in Iceland and that kind of stuff. So I was always in and out of the industry wherever I lived. And then it was, okay, well, it wasn't even like the fact that it was a cider, as there's like 4 bars on that street that I lived by, like a block from it. It was like, who's hiring? They're hiring. okay, sounds good. Like,
Yeah.
they're hiring, like, I'm hired. Perfect. And then it was like, okay, we're going to cider. And like, now I started learning more about cider and that kind of thing. Still was a beer drinker. Still am a beer drinker. But it was like, just like more about that culture of cider and how it's made. And like, cause I'd never been exposed to that side of it. I know how beer is made and all that kind of stuff, but never really thought much about cider. I think I'd made it once in college, and it was like, it's apple juice and yeast and a balloon on a bottle. And you're like, it doesn't taste good when it's done. But yeah, that was like the first kind of like big foray into it. And then after my year of service was up, I went full time at the cidery, and I was like, okay, well, this is like a job now and that kind of thing. And then before you know, my mom like calls up and was like, do you want to open a cidery in Salt Lake? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. Like, it sounds good.
That's so random.
Which is very, like, coming from her from the banking world, I would never expect it. But she wanted something to do something different and not necessarily just ride out 5 or 6 more years before she retired in the banking industry. Like, she wanted to stay active and do something different. So,
I mean, I guess that's where pickleball comes in.
Yeah.
That helps the activity.
The activity definitely is high with pickleball. Like, we have our leagues, so I'm playing in the league this weekend. So, people think I'm good at pickleball because we have a pickleball bar.
No,
I don't play ever.
Never actually, I feel like that's the thing that a lot of people forget. And I literally had this conversation in the last podcast episode of like, when you are the person running the show, you're not doing the things a lot of the time. And if you are, it's out of necessity. It's not because you want to be. Yeah.
And I have my friends like love supporting us. Like, you want to come hang out at the bar on your night off? I'm like, no. I'm there 6 days a week. Most times a lot of times 7. I'm like, I need to be out of the space for a day. So
yeah, that's fair.
So now I have my one buddy who we're gonna play in the league together. I'm like, we gotta practice. He's like, we definitely have to practice. I was like, we'll have to find some time, otherwise we're gonna be floundering a little bit in the first game this weekend. So
that's hilarious. Nice. And so when did the cidery? So when did you guys like decide to do the cidery to like when it actually opened?
So I think my mom, I first started working at the cidery in Minnesota in the fall of 2020. So that's when she kind of found out more about cider from me explaining to her. So I think that kind of piqued her interest. And then she had talked about it a little bit. And it must have been like May of 2021. So almost 3 years ago, she like reached out to a consultant to like kind of talk about like what since we didn't know that, the startup side, I knew like how to run a bar for the most part, what we need to do for that. So that was
also in Utah, it's wild.
Yeah. So as a consultant on like all the like what we need for like equipment wise, like how we need to hire and all that kind of stuff. That was probably in May, and then I think like it really became a thing when she was like, when are you gonna move out here to start this? And that was probably a fall of 2021 conversation. And I was like, okay, I'll move out beginning of next summer or whatever. And we put a date on it. It was like, I'm liking like I'm doing here, let's wait till this. And then it's like, got to the winter and I was like, getting kind of bored here of this. I'll be out there April. Yeah. And it was like, then I like cut my lease short, like put my 2 weeks in, and it was like, okay, I moved out here April of 2021, or I guess 2022 at that point. And then it was like, okay, I was gonna get a job at a bar here, like learn more of the Utah bar laws, because I'd never bartended out here. Yeah. And then it was like, we happened upon this, I was like kind of always consistently looking at real estate. And I think from the week I got in here, it was like realestate.com or whatever some website is to like look at commercial properties. And I was like, oh, this one looks interesting. Oh, it's too close to a church. This one looks interesting. Too close to a park. Not big enough for this. We want this kind of space. If we wanted to do something more active, could a pickleball court go in there? And he's like, no. Like, we're actually looking at Ogden originally too. Oh, and like, and my mom had spent some time in Ogden growing up when my grandpa was at Hill. Okay. So like, they're like, okay, smaller city, maybe cheaper prices, a little bit less competition, which was not the case because there was just less spaces for it to go since there was more parks or churches around. And then like I was driving to the front climbing gym one day on South Main, and I saw for a lease sign up, and I was like, well, that's probably the closest building to what we want. It has a huge back patio or lot because it was an old car dealership. Oh, okay. So it had all the space for the cars in the back, had a parking lot in front, had a big kind of empty garage building. Yeah. That was a little bit easier to like, you know, to tear down stuff as much. Yeah. And it was like, well, this one looks like it works. I was like, look into it. And then I think we had a lease signed like 3 weeks later.
That's awesome.
And it was like, well, shit, I guess this is real now. And then, so that was July of 2022. We had the lease signed. I think it was like, then it was architects, ordering equipment, hiring a cider maker, all this kind of stuff. And then construction basically started a day or two after New Year's, 2023.
Yeah.
And then done by May. And we had a license by June of, so like in 11 months from the lease signed to doors open was about 11 months.
That's fast.
And then probably 2 years in total of like some loose planning to...
What was it like working with DABS?
You know, it's definitely interesting. I mean...
Because you guys are in a weird gray area, I feel like.
Yeah, it's like this one thing with like cider. Cider gets put into wine, which even though cider is more of a beer percentage, but it's just based on ingredients and that kind of stuff. The toughest thing is like, I know, like they get a bad rap for the most part. They're kind of constricted by legislation. Totally. Legislation sets the laws, and they enforce what they have to set the laws. And some are over interpretation, what's like actually law versus what's like a guideline and that kind of thing. So they're generally pretty good about like, hey, this is what we have to do. Here's what you need to do. Blah blah blah. Their biggest like kind of downfall, and it's something they know. I think they're working on is a lot of people don't know the right answer. Yeah. So then you don't know the answer until you get a fine. Yep. And it's like, well, no one told me I couldn't do this. No one said, when I asked, no one responded or something like that. Like, hey, how am I supposed to do this? And they're like, oh, I'm not sure. Ask this person. That person's, I'm not sure. Ask this person. That person's like, I'm not sure either. We'll get back to you. And it's like, I just want a straight answer. And it's like, if you don't want me to ask the question and do something, I'll just start doing something until you say don't do it anymore, if that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's fair.
But there's no like real definition of a lot of things. And a lot of times cider is confusing for them because it's like, they're like, wait, it's not beer? I'm like, you guys should know this. It's not like in the beer standard and that kind of thing. But then again, like when you come to like kegs of cider, if it falls into wine, no one's really selling kegs of wine. No. So it's a little bit different in that too. So it gets confusing all across the board. And it's like a lot of times you're just looking for a straight answer and it's hard to get that because they don't want to tell you the wrong thing.
It's the same with the NA world.
Yeah.
Like being ambassadors for athletic, we get asked that stuff all the time. And it's literally one of those people are like, if it's non-alcoholic, why do I get ID'd at the grocery store? And I'm like, because it's technically classified as beer. And they don't want to classify it as otherwise. Yeah. Like, so I understand the being in a gray area.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, it's fun. Like, I mean, it's not fun necessarily, but it's, you're just like, and like they've had a lot of new employees lately, and they're like trying to work with us and like give us better answers. And you're like, if you could just find this out for me, because you don't want to do it wrong, obviously, but
you also want to get things done.
Get things done, and it's like I can't wait 3 weeks for an answer on some things, and it's like I'm just going to do it at a certain point.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. What are you excited about with the cidery, or in working in cider in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very social person. I mean, and growing up, moving around all the time, you meet so many people, but it's just fun to interact on the bar, like the front of house side of things. So you're just talking to people, meeting new people, making those connections. Yeah. And then it's just like growing the cideries. Also interesting, like we're already buying more tank space because we need to make more cider to keep up and that kind of things. And as more bars pick up our cider, it's fun to like, I mean, it's fun to go out there and do the sales side of it too. Like, hey, I want to introduce you to my product and like see how it does. Or you go to a bar and that, you know, serves your cider and you get to watch it go out and people are choosing and that kind of stuff. Or people getting excited about trying your product is always a really cool thing. Nice. And then it's just grow so you can make more money and not feel so strained on, be able to do more fun things with that money too, whether it's make products cheaper by being able to produce more or that kind of stuff, or do more interesting fun things that some extra cash can allow.
What was the impetus for doing the pickleball courts?
I think the big thing was my mom wasn't a big drinker herself. Okay. But she wanted a community space that was like we made good cider that people could enjoy. Yeah. But also that it was like an active space to be with friends and family. Okay. And that's like very Utah. Like everybody's out skiing, mountain biking, that kind of stuff. So everyone wants to be active, but you can also have like a drink, which like cider is kind of a nice lighter, doesn't feel as heavy in the stomach as a beer would. Totally. So it kind of goes in that kind of high energy, active lifestyle. So that was like just fun for pickleball, and it's a very social sport when it comes down to it.
Does cidery fall into the same category of only 21 plus is allowed?
Yes. So like with our cidery, so since it's wine, you have to have a full bar license to serve it.
Okay.
At least the way we are serving it. So if you don't want to be a restaurant, which force people to sit down and order, right? So like we have 3 licenses in total. Technically, this is where it gets kind of confusing. We have a license to manufacture alcohol, which is our cidery winery license.
Yep.
We're turning fruit juices into alcohol.
Yep.
We have a package agency license, which allows us to sell the products we produce on behalf of the state to go.
Got it.
So I have to sign a contract with the state saying I'm selling products for them, which is my own product.
Yeah.
And then I have a bar license to serve. If I didn't have the bar license, I could only sell to go and serve 5 ounces of cider per day per person as a tasting option.
Got it.
So to get that bar license, be able to drink a cider on the court, to drink a beer, to have a cocktail, that kind of thing, we need that bar license, which makes us 21 and over.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, if we were a restaurant or like something in between, you wouldn't be able to like walk around with your drink and go play, which is like a big part of it. Is like, hey, I could bring my beer out to the court, my cider to the court, sit down, play pickleball, go pick it up in between points and that kind of thing.
That's one of the areas that is a little bit confusing in Utah.
Yeah.
Like, there's certain things that are pretty straightforward. There's certain things that are, I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, now is like we always say, like if there was a license, like there's tavern licenses for breweries that allow you to serve just your 5% beer and under.
Yeah.
If there was that kind of license for cider, we probably would just have a tavern for cider, make 5% cider, and just try to make really good 5% cider, not worry about it.
That makes sense.
And then not have to do all these extra hoops to jump through. But no matter what percentage we make the cider at, we're still considered a high, or like considered a product that would go through the liquor store only, and that kind of stuff. So it'd all be treated like a high point beer, which is the tricky thing too. Which, like, if you come to the cider, there's weird pour amounts we have to do because we can't pour too much in a glass.
That makes sense.
But we can give you a whole bottle of cider technically, and you can't drink from the can because you're not allowed to drink from the bottle technically. So.
All right. I did not know that.
There's a lot of weird quirks for sure. People find it interesting, but it is definitely a tougher thing because, I mean, you're looking at percentages and price points. Like we're the same amount of cider as a beer, or double in price generally. Yeah. We're a little bit higher percentage, but it's the same amount of liquid. And people are like, why? Well, my taxes are triple for production as compared to a beer's taxes. So we're just like, right at the bat, we're getting taxed heavy because we're wine. Yep. And like, even federally, the hard cider didn't have a federal definition until like 2018. So like,
fascinating.
They didn't even break it apart from wine because they're just considered a fermentable fruit and that kind of stuff. That's wild. Even when I had, like, for every recipe we put out, I had to go get federal approval on the recipe. Yeah. And it's a specialty wine is what it's called, other. Like that. So they didn't have its own definition really, even in the eyes of the government still.
Learning so much.
Yeah.
Wild. Now, how would you guys say that, because you guys have been open for a year?
Just over 9 months now.
Okay. How would you say the community's developed around the cidery?
Yeah, it's been nice to see. I mean, we have definitely a lot of our consistent customers. And we have and you see that most in our pickleball league we've had lately. Like we have a Sunday league, and the real focus is not necessarily the pickleball sometimes. Yeah. It's more of like getting everybody to hang out with each other while they play pickleball. Yeah. So you have a lot of family units that come in. So it's like mom, dad, their kids that are in their 20s, and like they're all going to come play pickleball together. They're going to hang out. We see a lot of people like when their kids are in town, the parents are bringing the kids in. Okay, or when the kids' parents are in town, they're bringing their parents. Yeah. Because I think it's one of those easy sells too. Even with corporate clients we have coming in, it's like, hey, mom, dad, we're going to this bar. Oh, bar? No, there's pickleball. We can go play pickleball. You don't have to drink. We'll have a non-alcoholic option available or something like that. Or like it's not your main focus isn't just going to the bar to sit down and drink. It's to go be active on top of everything else.
Do something, enjoy the entire experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which is nice. And then we have a lot of like apartments around us. We have more and more people walking over, or like groups of friends that have gone climbing together. And it's like, hey, let's go stop and get a drink afterwards and that kind of thing. Sweet. But then we have even customers that we had this one couple, Michelle and Luis. They moved here from Colombia just not too long ago, and they would come and play pickleball when we had our free courts open, and then eventually they played and met some people that play often too. Oh, nice. And now they always play together. They've joined the league, and they've met a lot of friends through that and kind of stuff. So it's cool to see that side of it where people are coming just to play sometimes and like meet other people, and it's like, hey, can we pop it in? Like, do you guys want to join us for a game? Because like playing one-on-one pickleball is tiring. Like doubles is way nicer. So it's like, hey, you guys want to join us? And like that kind of community building is really cool to see for sure.
Nice, very cool. What are you excited about for life in the cidery?
I'm excited to just see, like, this is our first real summer when it comes down to it, since we opened in June of last year. So like it's just fun to see this side of things, like as it grows and people are more excited when the weather gets nice, and then hopefully that affords me to not necessarily step back from bartending, but help let the bartending kind of go on its way, and I can do a little more of the auxiliary stuff around it, whether it's more events or better putting on of events, I should say, and then like the sales and that kind of stuff, and just getting the word out more and more about the cidery itself. Nice. It's almost festival season. That's always fun. We get to go to the different festivals.
That's fair.
Like we'll be at Ogden Beer Fest, which is a really early one. It's April. That's even earlier than Beer Fest. Most beer fests are, but like that kind of stuff is just fun to be a part of. And like,
did you guys do Deer Valley last year?
We didn't. That's one of the ones that I put on my list to make sure we get into that and that kind of stuff.
That one's a wild experience.
And that's like the best thing about Beer Fest. Like it's always fun. Like people are always having a good time. You get to exposure to a lot of these new people. Like, wait, what's this? And then the hard thing is like convincing them. Like, just try the cider. It's like it's a free drink. Like I mean, you get it with. I've seen it with.
The amount of people at Deer Valley Beer Fest. I did it in 2021. I did Deer Valley Beer Fest, and literally like because it was NA, they didn't have to use tokens.
Yeah.
And people would be like, "Oh, there's no alcohol. I'm just here to get drunk." And I'm like, there's more to beer than just getting trashed. Like
and I was telling you, like the one time I did a tasting event in like middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. Where there was an athletic rep there, and no one would try it. And it's like he's like, it's free, just try it. Like there's no harm to you to try this one beverage.
We even had it at the private event that we met at.
Like
literally people would be like, "Oh, there's no alcohol."
Like, that cider.
I'd be like, literally, it's free.
You get this like certain age of like 40 to 60-year-old males that will refuse to drink it because it's like they don't.
It's not a beer.
And it's like I think it's because it's too feminine in their eyes a lot of times, which is a bad downplay. Because like our cider maker was like this 6'4" big dude that played rugby in college, and he's like, I make the cider. Like, come on, like it's high percentage. You have to have like a bourbon or like a really like a jalapeno cider. And they go, okay, I'll try it then.
Dude,
but like
ginger sumac is my favorite.
Awesome. That's our #1 seller. I mean, it's just a super crushable cider, not too sweet, but has a nice like balanced flavor to it. So it's like once you get one person to try it, they're like, oh, this isn't that bad. Like sometimes you have to get them by like giving them a different type of cider or like a funkier cider that okay, I'm gonna try because it's weird. Oh, I kind of like that. Let me try something else.
What is the weirdest thing you've made?
We made a pizza cider last year for Pie and Beer Day.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
It was a last minute addition to the. Well, let's do something funny with this. It's Pie and Beer Day. And it is basically everything you'd put into an Italian sausage almost.
Oh dear.
It's like very fragrant. It was like basil, oregano, red pepper, coriander, orange peel. So it kind of smelled like a sausage pizza. Tasted way better. Like it was very herbal cider, and some people were like, "Ooh, gross." I'm like, "Oh, that's fair." And some people are like, "This is a year-round option, right?" We're like, "No." And that's like we do like fun ciders like that or weird ciders, and it's like not necessarily meant to be like I want to drink a lot of this cider. It's meant to be like, "Hey, here's a really fun flavor," and like I'll ask, like, try it if you can understand the flavor it's coming from, and like, but I don't want more. And that's a lot of like. This is good for a glass. I don't need a second glass.
Right.
Like when I was like a milkshake IPA or a really super sour, funky beer, it's like, okay, that's fine, but like that's not my everyday drinker, and that's like totally fine.
Yeah, there's the everyday drinker, and then there's the like rando one-off.
Exactly. We do small batch each month, and in 2 weeks we'll have it, and it'll be all Asian inspired ciders. So we have a shiso and shishito pepper cider. Okay. Which is like a Japanese kind of take on mole.
Okay.
Wasabi yuzu.
Fascinating.
Which that comes from like I had a favorite beer in Iceland, and that was a wasabi beer. So we got all these like stems and leaves of wasabi plant, and it has like this really great like kind of spicy parsley flavor to it. We'll do a pho spice cider. Okay. So everything in a pho except for like onions and garlic and that kind of stuff, and then a Chinese 5 spice. So it's like these just like, and cider's a really great canvas. I say like for a lot of people like cider. You want it balanced, like you want to be able to express the flavors you're going for, but also that appley back note, because like, that's what you want. But it's a great way to showcase a lot of different things, which is why you see so many different random flavors of cider.
Yeah.
That you really can't get in beer because there's a whole different process going on.
It's very different things.
Yeah.
Fascinating. You'll have to let me know when those come out.
March 22nd. We'll only make like 3 gallons of each one just because we're just pulling off, and we don't want to keep them forever because they are weird.
No, I mean, I mean, again, you want a little bit.
Yes, and that's where you get like a little flight. You get all 4, you can try all 4 of them, and it's like, cool, I'm going to go back to the ginger sumac now.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the regular thing
now.
So, when you're not at work, what do you like to do?
The winter, I've been trying to ski as much as possible. I take Wednesdays off, so Wednesday's my ski day.
Nice.
So like I'm going to Sundance tomorrow.
Nice.
I was at Park City a couple weeks ago. I've Brighton and all that kind of stuff. So I've been.
What's your normal resort?
Weirdly enough, this season I haven't had I've been to Solitude the most because I went there a lot of early season when there's like the Bunny Hill Open. But I think I've been to probably Park City the most, weirdly enough.
Interesting.
But I've done like a couple days at Brighton, couple days at Alta, couple days at Solitude now that like the snow's come in. I've done Park City a bunch. I got to do Powder Mountain. I've got to do Deer Valley quite a few times too. So like I've really got this. I think I'm on 27 days for the season. I think I've at least had 3 days at most of the resorts in the area. So I still have to knock off Snowbird. I haven't done Snowbasin this season either.
Snowbird was not my favorite.
That's like I've always been like hesitant because like I know it's steeper. I'm like a decent skier now. I can manage, but it's like I want to like really make the most of it when I'm there.
Yeah, we went last year, and it was fun, but like it's so crowded.
Yeah.
That like when you get to a space where you're like, okay, I could open up and have a little bit of fun, not necessarily like flying fast, but like I can really ski. There's like a whole ton of people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this kills a lot of the ability to have fun, where like I can go to Brighton and I can get away from people pretty easily.
Well,
and
that's like where it's been nice, where, like the bar affords me to like take certain days off, or like I can work it out, or like midweek skiing has been great because it's like there's just less people there all the time, no matter what you do, and it's like, okay, I'm going Wednesday, and like that. Even my roommates that my one roommate that skied with a lot, she had a job that only allowed her to ski on the weekends last year for the most part. Yeah. And she's like, well, I had to make the most of every day because you're fighting to get through the crowd, like get somebody to get out before it got too crazy.
Totally.
Now she can midweek ski a little more, and she's like, I think I've done less days but had better times because like when you can go to a Wednesday afternoon and it's like there's no lift lines, so you're not like you're taking like runs, you're getting no ones are really around you, you're having like way more fun.
Yeah.
You don't feel bad about taking a break then because you don't need to make the most of it and that kind of thing. So it's like definitely like I've been a quality over quantity. Like I have friends in the 50 to 60 days, but I'm like I could have stopped 2 weeks ago and not had any more ski days. I'm like I had a really good ski season still.
I feel the same.
Because I had like 3 to 5 really great days that like those were awesome days. Like that made the whole season right there.
Yeah, we had a couple days. Alex's birthday was snowing like 2 inches an hour.
Oh, nice.
And it was a Friday at Brighton, so it wasn't super packed.
Yeah.
And we ended up doing 22 and a half miles with 23,500 feet of vertical.
At Brighton too is crazy. Yeah. It's like Brighton's hard to get some vert sometimes.
Dude, it is insane. But like it was one of those, like we were planning on just like doing a long tailgate lunch thing.
Yeah.
And it was snowing so hard we didn't want to sit at the truck.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, I guess we're just gonna go. And it's exactly that. Like we were sore as can be after.
Yeah.
But it was one of the most fun days, and we will remember that one for a long.
Well, now I was telling about Powder Mountain. Like I went on a Wednesday, and it was snowing hard. There was no one really there, and me and my friend had never been there, so we took a little complimentary tour around the mountain. The guy's like, we can't go on only go on greens, but I'll show you where we'll do every run down to each lift so you can come up and kind of know where you're at and that kind of stuff. Like hour and a half of that, and then I was like, okay, let's hit this area, and it was like people were in line for like the tow. I'm like, why is no one just going right there where all the deep snow is?
Yeah.
And then it was like how big the mountain is, and it's like, oh, like no matter how many people are here, like the snow's not. And like I'm like, is this busy? And the guy's like, yeah, it's pretty busy for us. I'm like, it's every 6th chair. I'm like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
And then it was like, end of the day, we were like, let's do this one run, like the Woodies, or it takes you down to the bus, the bus back to the resort. And it's like, we went through once, like, that was awesome. Now let's go a little bit farther, like, let's traverse a little more. And it was like, there was no skiers, there's all snowboarders in the area, so they weren't going as far. And there's like Then we're just getting clean runs of snow, and it's like, you can't beat that. And it's like,
No.
I could have, like, I'm good with the season. That one day could have made a whole season,
totally.
would have been worth it and that kind of thing. Or, like, even, like, a nice powder day at Deer Valley when the visibility's bad, but you can get in the trees and then...
You get over into some of those, like, far-off spots that, like... Like, dude, what is the John Paul lift or whatever? The one that's
that's Snow Basin.
No, sorry, you're right.
There's Empire.
They're, like, Deer Valley, like, far off. You basically have to, like, go all the way right.
It's Empire,
it's
even.
right of, like, Daily Shoots and stuff. Like, the next one over. I forget what it is. But anyways, my buddy and I went there earlier in the season, and it was like 2 days after it had snowed, and we were in the trees hitting completely untouched.
Yeah.
And it was just insane.
It's crazy. We were doing like off Quincy, and it was just like this like casual little ride in, then you like could pop into the trees.
Yeah.
And then you get like these nice great lines of like 1.5 foot snow.
Yeah.
Pop out. We did like 3 or 4 times. We're like, we're getting tired. Like, one more time. Yeah, let's do it another time. And it was like, let's take a break. Go back for a couple more. Like, let's go back for a couple more. And like, and there was like, every time you went back, there was still more snow to be had. And like, it was like, okay, let's go a little bit farther and go down this one now. And it was like, oh, you can't beat it sometimes. And I actually had some friends out from Iowa recently. It was my friend, his brother, and his dad, who like they skied Colorado their whole life. Like, everybody from Des Moines drives to Colorado. They stop there.
Yeah.
And then they're like, they're coming out. I'm like, oh, we're gonna get any snow? Like, this is gonna suck for them. Well, they came in that Wednesday. We had that big week, like kind of that big Wednesday, Thursday, Friday storm.
Yeah.
So it was like they skied at Solitude on Thursday, and my friend's like, I've never seen this much snow before. Like, and he was in Denver for years.
Yeah.
And then the next day we skied Deer Valley. Like, visibility was bad, but we were having a good time. Like, snow was still deep, and then we got into a Saturday Bluebird at Alta with like still fresh snow, and like it was just like you couldn't beat it. And they're like, we're going to come back now. I'm like,
that's awesome.
Yes, you'll have to come back. Like, this is like put Colorado to shame this week. And like, I'm glad you guys have these 3 perfect days of like, this is real snow out here.
Yeah. I'm doing my first Alta day tomorrow.
Hell yeah.
I'm super stoked.
Hell yeah.
Alex snowboards, so like, it's not something I could do normally.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, one of my buddies was taking work off anyways. And he's like, hey, you want to go to? I was like, yes, I will gladly.
Well, you have to go to Catherine's for sure. That's a fun little spot.
Okay.
It's off like the Supreme lifts. Like there's a couple different like gates into it, which I think Alta is an interesting one because like I feel like most of the terrain's through a gate.
Yeah.
But the gate and like they always like the gate. Always in my mind like, okay, the gate's like big time. Like it's never that bad.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, there's some such fun areas at Alta, and like, and I can get why people love it. And like my friends are like, oh, Alta's the best for sure. And like, and it's kind of great that there is no snowboarders because it is like really fun terrain, but like a lot of traverses and stuff to get to stuff.
Do you remember the movie Johnny Tsunami?
Yes, we watched it recently.
Do you know it was filmed here, right?
Yeah, at Brighton.
Yeah. It makes me laugh knowing now, because like obviously in the 90s, I knew nothing about this. And like you literally have Alta and Brighton that are like over the top of the mountain from each other.
Yeah.
And
we were watching it when my my roommate's brother was in town. Like, we're gonna watch it, and it was like, what part of Brighton is that? Like, they must be a Millie. They must be the Millie Bowl in this area.
100% in the Millie. For all the like the scenes where he was like off the rocket.
Yeah.
That was 100% Millie Bowl. But it was also funny because like you see Molly Green's like labeled as a story, and you're like,
yeah, exactly. You gotta love when you're like in that place. Even like when things like happen in Iceland nowadays, I'm like, oh, interesting. They turned that tourist center into some like FBI waypoint that has like 20 stories underground or like some vault, and you're like, what? They're like,
yeah, that's wild.
There's been like, so like, well, this is a biomedical facility. I'm like, this is just a geothermal plant that has like no inside space actually at all.
That's hilarious. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. It was fun chatting.
Appreciate you having me on.
Dude, it was. I love having conversations with people from vastly different backgrounds, and this is definitely not a disappointing conversation.
Well, I'm glad to be here. So we'll have to go skiing sometime soon.
Yeah, let's get out while the skiing is still good. Yeah. I once again want to thank Joe for coming on the podcast. It was a fascinating conversation talking swimming and travel, and I learned so much about what it takes to start a business doing any sort of alcohol-related product here in the state of Utah. There is a lot of things that have to go right, and it is not a cheap or easy endeavor. Thanks again for teaching me some things and also showing me a little bit about your life and how you got here to Salt Lake City. be sure you're subscribed on your platform of choice, because next week's episode is going to be amazing. His name is Puck Lewis, and he is a barber. He is a former pastry chef. He is on the board of Bikers Against Child Abuse. Insanely interesting human. Be sure you're subscribed, because you're not going to want to miss that conversation. Have a great week. See you guys next time.